What's going on, nerds? My name is Jesse, and welcome back to the channel. Man, I am ready to do this. We're doing a book talk. It's going to be a little bit of a different book talk because normally I don't do shit on like autobiographies because they're about people's lives, and it's not exactly a fictional book where you can have different plot points and things lead to this, things lead to that. It's completely different. But this one is awesome. It's about Kevin Smith called Tough Shit. Here is the book right here. You can Google that. It's on Amazon, Audible, Kindle, all that shit. I definitely recommend the audiobook because it's narrated by Kevin Smith, which kind of adds a lot to it when you hear the man who wrote the book about his own life narrate it to you. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. You know what I'm saying? So also, I'll put links to everybody that I'm about to talk about in the description below, including Kevin Smith and Jeremy Simser. Jeremy Simser is a storyboard artist. He's worked with Kevin Smith before, I believe, on maybe Supergirl. I think it's Supergirl. I know he worked on all of that DC TV show stuff. He's an awesome guy. I'll put link for his Twitter down below. I noticed him from CinemaSins. CinemaSins had them on their podcast called Sincast. Link in the description below for that. I saw him tweet to Kevin Smith about his book and said, "Hey man, you need to listen to the audiobook." And I was like, whoa. So I tweeted Jeremy, "Yo man, there's the audiobook. Is it on Audible?" It's on Audible. 5 minutes later, I had that shit downloaded and I was listening to it because it's fucking awesome, man. It's awesome. Kevin Smith's got that low, like, baritone voice. Man, you could just, like, you can go to sleep over that, man. I'm telling you. But it's so riveting, man. Kept me up all night. Finished it's like 5 hours long. It was real quick and easy. Do it in the background, cooking dinner, whatever. Great book, man. Heavily suggested. I'm glad I'm doing this review. I'm hoping a couple of people will see this and maybe pick it up. All right. I'm not going to say the spoilers because it's about his life. If you know anything about him, then maybe you know some of this stuff. I found it really interesting. The way he wrote it, you can tell that this man directs movies for a career, and writes scripts for a career because the way he wrote his autobiography, it's got a nice little flow to it. It could be definitely picked up and adapted into a movie easily because the way it's written is it's got nice hills and valleys and it goes and it flows really nice. And I just found it really interesting, man. If you don't know anything about Kevin Smith, he's very vulgar, so heads up for that. It's definitely not for kids. I'd wait till you're about 16 or 17 to read this. It's probably the appropriate age. All right, man, let's do it. Let's talk about it. Okay, the book starts out. It's not a traditional autobiography because it doesn't go like through his life in general. It doesn't go like, hey, when I was 16 I did this, when I was 18 I did that, when I was 20 I did this. It's very informal for a autobiography, in my opinion. The beginning does start out pretty traditional. He's talking about how he got into film, which I do find that stuff very, very interesting. He's talking about how he made Clerks. Well, he starts with talking about his dad and how they used to read comics, listen to comedy, and watch movies together. And then he started working at a gas station, which inspired him to make Clerks, where he met a friend who also was really into film. They started hanging out, so they made Clerks. And I found that whole Clerks section of the book very, very interesting. Where he's talking about how he made it and he shot it in 27 days and it cost $25,000 to make. He took it to some film festivals and Miramax fucking bought that shit for $250,000. That's an incredible story. So that part of the book is very, very riveting to me. I really enjoyed it. I heavily recommend that you read this fucking book, man. All right, let's keep going. The second part of the book is kind of about his career and kind of floating in between doing what he wants to do versus what Miramax is kind of asking him to do, and then eventually separating from Miramax and starting to think about talking to other studios and then making his own company called what was it called? It was about the guy who owned Miramax. Oh man, I'll look it up and put it in the comments. So he's honoring a guy in Miramax who really isn't the guy he thought he was. Man, I just found all that stuff really, really interesting. The Chasing Amy stuff, really great. Talking about Ben Affleck. Another thing that I thought was, like, just had me glued to it, I just wanted to listen to it so bad, was him talking about Bruce Willis in the movie Cop Out and how his totally horrible experience with that and Bruce Willis is. And I love how he doesn't hold anything back. He's going to tell how it is, you know, like, this guy's a fucking dick. This is what I had to deal with. I'm trying to make him do shit. He won't do shit. And I'm like, ah, man, that sounds terrible. So, shout out to Bruce Willis. I found the Bruce Willis section really, really interesting, and especially having him do Get Out, which is definitely more mainstream, buddy cop movie, and then going back to his roots and did he do Chasing Amy before that? Anyways, Chasing Amy comes after that part in the book. Him talking about doing Chasing Amy was really interesting, and then him moving on to talking about starting to do a podcast with another one of his friends and touring around the world with doing this podcast. I thought that shit was really interesting. And I think the most riveting part of the book for me personally, and the most frustrating part of the book, was when he was talking about Southwest Airlines. So that happened in 2010. In 2010, I was 19 years old and was not socially conscious, was not even on Twitter, Instagram, none of that shit. All I cared about was my little bubble. So I missed all of this stuff, and I didn't know anything about it. I guess it happened around 2010 from what I can gather online. I found this really, 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 really interesting because I'm not a fat guy. I'm just a regular sized guy. So I feel his pain. My little brother is overweight, and I feel bad when people make fun of people who are overweight or fat or whatever you want to call them. So that part of the book kind of hit me personally. And as he's talking about getting kicked out of the plane, and he's Kevin Smith, and people know him and seen him on the plane, and he's like, dude, look, my armrests go down, and they're being just being dicks, man. They're being stuck up dicks to him. They're like, the pilot said. He's like, dude, the pilot can't see me. I just sat down. You're just saying that because you think I'm too fat to fit in here, and you're just trying to get me out of this plane so the other two people don't feel uncomfortable, which is a joke, man. It's a serious joke. It really got me upset. And then seeing the payoff of him tweeting about it, because he had I guess he said he had 1.25 million followers at that point in time. So seeing him get to tweet about it, and then kind of get some backlash, and then he's talking about how the guy starts running out. Oh, Kevin, Mr. Smith, here, let me help you out here. Let me help you out. We'll get you on the plane right now. Please stop tweeting. And he just keeps tweeting and keeps hammering it home. And then you think it's over. He's in a chair. He's got his empty seat between him. And then another girl comes and sits next to him who is also overweight. And she looks like she's upset. And she gets pulled off the plane for a second and comes back. And then he's like, they don't talk to each other for a little while. They land, and he's like, hey, you okay? And she's like, yeah, just having a bad day. He's like, yeah, these people tried to kick me off the plane because they said I was too fat to fit in there. Like, wow, something just happened to me, the same thing. They were making her feel bad because she didn't have a second seat. So she was like, you could sit next to Mr. Smith there because he bought an extra seat. Which is, it's just terrible shit. To think about this kind of shit still goes on is a joke, especially after all the tweets he just said. You'd think maybe they would feel a little bit bad, but no, they're doing the same shit to the next person. It's just a joke, man. I found that part of the book very, very frustrating, but at the same time, it needed to be said. And most of all, I'm glad that he had the following at the time to make people aware of it, which is awesome. So don't fly Southwest. So shout out to them. The last part of the book is about him and his wife, which I thought was also very interesting and had me riveted because it's very important for people to have support systems. I have my fiance who is very, very dear to me, and without her I would be in a very, very bad place. So I think it's very important for people to have a good support system, whether that's a best friend or a wife or a lover of some kind, doesn't matter. That kind of stuff is very important. So to hear him talk about his wife, who he loves very much, and talking about his daughter, who's named Harley Quinn, that's a fucking dope name. You're the man for that. I just found that stuff really interesting. I'm a big fan of love, and I'm glad to see that he has found it. So, with that said, I loved how he talked about how his wife had to sacrifice a lot of things for him, and he can't thank her enough or pay her back for that, which I think is important to say. So, with that being said, I'm not going to go too much longer on this book because it's really short. It's 5 hours long on Audible. Probably take you 3 hours to read it if you're just reading it in book form, but I heavily suggest the audiobook. Shout out to Jeremy Simser and Kevin Smith for liking my tweets. You guys are fucking awesome. Links in the description below for them. Also, follow me on Twitter. And if you like this review, please give me a sub. And I will catch you guys on the flip side. Later.